I want us to unpack some of the pencil-in college football playoff teams that we can address here as we sit in May. I think for full transparency, you can probably put right around 25% of the bracket together right now. So 3 college football teams I think are playoff, not locks, but soft locks as we sit here during the springtime. The first of those teams is Georgia. And FanDuel has Georgia's odds to make the college football playoff at minus 500. All right, so FanDuel feels pretty good about Georgia making the playoff. We do too. The big reason why, I do not see any glaring weaknesses with this team. I think if they were going to miss the college football playoff, they would somehow have to lose 4 games. I really think a 9-3 Georgia team with the schedule that they have would find their way into the playoff. And I think that the games that are most questionable are the games at Alabama, at Texas, and at Ole Miss. Those 3 games I'm most curious about when it comes to talking about Georgia. But here's the question. Are they really going to go 0-3 in that stretch? And if they do they lose another game? Because I think they could go 0-3, play all 3 of those teams tight, and still get into the dance. The way that they're built right now, I think, is as dangerous as any team in college football. They are more dynamic than they've ever been offensively, in my opinion. Carson Beck, I think, has a real chance to be QB1 this time next year when it comes to the NFL draft. And they have gotten some weapons for him to make that offense real deal dynamic. Like, you add Colby Young, you like what you saw from him during the spring and what you heard from him during the spring. You have Trevor Etienne in that backfield who's going to add some more depth and I think be the lead rusher for you this season in Athens. And the experience that Carson Beck has as well shouldn't be overlooked. He gets his second year in the system with the same offensive coordinator in a system last year where, let's just be real here, he was real efficient when it came to his execution in 2024. 70% of his, or in 2023, 70% of his passes he completed. So he gets a chance to build off that and have even more continuity from that. I think that's dangerous. Kirby Smart even said as much. He feels like they maybe didn't cut him loose early enough at Georgia last year and didn't allow him to really have full control of the offense and full run of the offense, and I think that's going to change this year. The other part about this, I mentioned those 3 games that I'm circling for Georgia in terms of games that could maybe be the biggest test for them. If Georgia does drop one of those games, the way that Kirby Smart has wired his football team, whenever Georgia loses, it is not a depressant. It like wakes them up. When Georgia loses a football game, we've seen this over the course of the last couple of seasons, it's like an ice bath. Like some folks, they lose a game and they get down in the dumps and they start questioning themselves and it hurts the locker room and it just sort of causes the whole thing to fall apart. For Georgia, I think it's the opposite. I think it's a wake-up call. It's like an ice bath. Get some cold water dumped on you. Everything kind of wakes up a little bit. Okay, hey, we got to fix this. We got to come to our senses a little bit here. That's what I think would allow Georgia to really be scary in 2024 in this 12-team playoff. Giving them more margin for error is not a good deal. Giving Kirby Smart and that football team a couple of mulligans, not the way that you want to approach things in 2024. Ohio State, what I saw, they have the best odds to make the college football playoff in 2024. FanDuel has them at minus 650. Minus 650. That is ridiculous. The reason why I like Ohio State so much and why I have them as a pencil-in playoff team, as does FanDuel based on those odds, their combination of ingredients on the roster plus their path to a playoff. In the Big Ten, I think a 2-loss team probably finds their way in. So again, Ohio State, I'm not calling my shot for them to win the Big Ten, but they upgrade at quarterback, and situationally, they will be a better team offensively. And some of that, obviously, you could tip your hat to Chip Kelly in the way that he's going to call the offense, but I just mean in general. When Ohio State is in 3rd and 4 this upcoming season, you will feel very different as an Ohio State fan than you did last year. Because last year you got Kyle McCord playing quarterback. Depending on who was healthy in that running back room, you felt okay about your chances to run the football. But your thought process more than likely was, okay, how do we get the ball to Marvin Harrison Jr.? And can Kyle McCord make the right decision and be efficient enough to allow us to pick up this 3rd and 4, right? You didn't feel bad, but you had some of those questions. You had some of those feelings as to where the football needs to go. Now, this upcoming season on 3rd and 4, you're talking about, is it a 2-back set where you got Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins in the game? Is it a situation where you could see Will Howard on a run-pass option? Maybe you see him tucking and run on the read option? Is it a situation where the ball is going out to Emeka Egbuka? Is it to Jeremiah Smith? And I'm not saying they didn't have options last year offensively, but I think this upcoming season, situationally, Ohio State has so many other ways they can beat you to where I think that's a game changer. I keep hearing that Will Howard is like a 2.0 of Kyle McCord, and I'm not dunking on Kyle McCord. I just don't see it with Will Howard. He has more experience. He's a better athlete. I'm really excited to see how he looks in this offense. I think it's going to be a very, very good setup. Also, speaking of ingredients on that roster, they have the number one defense in America. Period. I don't feel bad saying that at all. I think with Caleb Downs adding into that system, with all the guys they have coming back from last year's team that allowed single-digit points per game, they're going to be a force. They have another year in Jim Knowles' defense to get comfortable in that scheme. They're going to be a problem. So that's the roster ingredients. I think it is as good as anyone else in the country. I believe that's why Joel Klatt had them as his number one team in the country post-spring. But the path for them, to me, is where it gets really interesting. To me, I think it's a 3-game season. Not to say that they couldn't slip up somewhere else, but there's 3 games that you circle as an Ohio State fan when you get a hold of that schedule. It is the game at Oregon, it's the game at Penn State, and then it's Michigan and Columbus. I don't see a world where Ohio State goes 0-3 in that stretch. I think 1-2 in that stretch would get you in, and I'd be surprised if Ohio State were to go 1-2 in that stretch. So the combination of ingredients, the path they have in front of them, I like Ohio State a lot to be a pencil-in playoff team. Now, Oregon is a team that I also think is a pencil-in playoff team for a similar reason to Ohio State. They don't have as good of odds as Georgia or Ohio State. FanDuel has them at -210. So you still have to bet a little bit of money to make some money against the suits there if you want to put Oregon in as a playoff team. But I don't think that the offense with them, with Dillon Gabriel, is going to miss a beat. And I think the defense has a chance to be even better than they were last year. Let's start with the offense. Dillon Gabriel, the fit offensively for them is perfect. It is. Like we said it even when he jumped in the portal. He is a left-handed version of Bo Nix. Physically a little bit different, but the same skill set nonetheless. He can run it for you. He can throw it on time and to the right place for you. And that's the big part of this. Like his skill set, I think, is rooted in the way that he knows where to go with the football. Like he has all the ability to be a distributor and to kind of be that point guard for you. But really what I love about him is the fact that he's played a lot of college football. Like my guy's going on year 6. You know how much experience you have after playing 6 years of college football? There's not a lot you haven't seen. And I'm not saying that Autzen won't be a different experience for him and playing in the Big Ten. There won't be some new things that he sees in that regard from a scheme or from an environment. But like for the most part, Dillon Gabriel is going to be one of the cooler hands in the stadium. And when you're able to have a cool hand and a calm mind, you think clearly. When you think clearly in this offense, you throw to the right person. You get to the right person in this offense, all their weapons they have, you're going to score a lot of points. So that's the big piece offensively. And then defensively, as I said, they bring back a lot. We talked about them landing Derek Harmon and the defensive line they have. Got Jabbar Muhammad through the portal, the corner from Washington. They bring back 70% of the production from last year's squad that allowed 17 points a game. So the continuity from last year plus the talented pieces, I love the way they're built. Now, the path is also a major part of this for Oregon. They have 2 major tests. You have Ohio State in Autzen, and then you're at Michigan. I think they could go 0-2 and still find their way in. I really do. I mean, the number 12 team last year in the college football playoff was Oklahoma from the Big 12, and they had 2 losses. And I don't think their losses were as good as Oregon. I mean, if Oregon loses to Michigan and Ohio State, as we sit here in May, to me, those are better losses than the game against Kansas if you're Oklahoma. And that's not throwing shade at Oklahoma. Like, that's just to be real here. That's the way that I would look at that thing if I were an Oregon fan or from the College Football Playoff Committee. So 2 losses. If they lose both of those games, I think they still find their way in. Still some tricky ones on the schedule. You got to go to Wisconsin. There's Michigan State for Oregon. But even so, like, I really have a hard time seeing a way where Oregon misses the College Football Playoff with their roster and that schedule. So those are the 3 teams I would pencil in. Now, I think there's probably some merit for like the next closest team you could talk about. I think Ole Miss is interesting there. If I were to put one more team in here, you say, JD, we need 4 teams. Give us one more team. I think Texas is fascinating. The reason why I don't have Texas as a pencil-in team is because there's still so many games for them that I'm just not sure what to make of their opponent. And there's a lot of new pieces for Texas to where I'm not sure what to make of the production they're going to have to replace with Xavier Worthy and Adonai Mitchell accounting for almost 2,000 yards receiving last year. They got some good pieces, but what is Michigan going to be? We don't even know who Alex Orji is going to be if he ends up being the starting quarterback. We don't know what all that new production in Michigan is going to be. They got to play them week 2 in the Big House. Oklahoma, it's Red River. Like, we think that Texas is going to be the superior roster. We thought Texas was the better roster last year. Kind of the way that it works. They got to play Georgia. That'll be tough. Kentucky with Brock Vandagriff. Who knows what Kentucky's going to be? They're at A&M. That's going to be an absolutely insane rivalry environment at Kyle Field to finish the season. So there's so many games here to where I'm still a little bit hesitant to see exactly what Texas is. But if I had to pick a team, it's like, hey, give us 4 teams, your best estimation to make the college football playoff. I think Texas would also be in that group. So my pencil in teams, and FanDuel supports this based on the odds they give us. We like Georgia. We like Ohio State. And then based on the roster and the path, I feel pretty good saying Oregon's going to be a college football playoff team as we sit here in May. Hey, y'all. Thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also, be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.